Hello everyone and welcome to SplitSecond. We want to specially thank all our patrons for the constant support, and the viewers and subscribers that keep up following our content. Tonight, after the release of this video, we will host a small stream with a Q&A session with everyone that wants to join in, and reveal the winners of our 10k subscribers giveaway, so feel free to come up and spend some good time with us all. This week, Hélder brewed a Marath Will of the Wild combo deck, Baal brewed an Obeka brewed Chronologist combo as well, David is piloting Alesha who smiles at death with a list from our patron ToxicCat, and Leite is on Wyatt Taylor's 75 Shimmer Zur's list with a couple of card changes. Before we show starting hands, we want to do another announcement. This upcoming Sunday we will be joining up with Patrick from the 99 for another episode of Brew Wars, live on his YouTube channel at 2 PM Eastern Standard Time. Hélder is going first, and unfortunately he had to mulligan down to 5. Finding a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, Windswept Heath, King Sense for extra draw, as well as OK Adversary. However, none of his opponents are playing green, and Nightshade Peddler transformed his commander in a sniping machine. He sent to the bottom a Plains and a Reflecting Pool. Baal mulligan once and kept a Volcanic Island, Misty Rainforest along with a Mox Diamond and Mana Vault for ramp, allowing for a turn to Obeka if he finds a land in the top 2. Swansong for interaction, Demonic Consultation lacks the Hated Merfolk, and Warrior's Oath is a Time Walk paired with Obeka. David kept his first 7 and quite the beefy ones, City of Brass, Wooded Foothills and Windswept Heath for lands, with a Mox Diamond and Sol Ring as ramp. Sarah Ascendant for early pressure, especially versus Zur, whose game plan revolves around fetching Necropotence, and he still has Imperial Recruiter that can serve as a 1-card combo with the right amount of mana. Finally, Leite was also unfortunate to have to mulligan down to 5, especially as the 4th player in turn order. However, a Windswept Heath paired with a Mana Crypt will allow for a turn 1 Time Twister and disrupt his opponent's mulligan decisions, as well as get him a new 7. Preordain and Enlightened Tutor can be used in case that plan fails, and he sent to the bottom either Flux Reservoir and Talisman of Hierarchy. Ready for this match? Hélder starts his turn with a simple Windswept Heath and passes. Baal's top deck is going to change this game quite a lot. He plays a Volcanic Island and casts his Mox Diamond, discarding a Misty Rainforest. Instead of playing his Mana Vault, he casts his drone Counterbalance and passes his turn. David plays a City of Brass and casts a Mox Diamond. Counterbalance triggers and it reveals a dramatic reversal, so the Mox resolves and David discards a Wooded Foothills. He then casts his Sol Ring and follows that with his Sarah Ascendant, passing after that with 3 cards in hand. Leite plays a Windswept Heath and cracks it for a Tundra. He then casts a Mana Crypt and follows it with a Time Twister. Hélder responds to it by cracking his Windswept Heath to find a Savannah, and as everyone passes priority, Twister resolves. Leite passes and Hélder simply plays a Scalding Tarn and cracks it for a Taiga. He then casts Drenith Magistrate, triggering Counterbalance, and Baal reveals a Praetor's Grasp, so Drenith resolves. Hélder passes and Baal draws, plays an Underground Sea and casts a Phantasmal Image, momentarily thinking of copying Drenith to also prevent Hélder from accessing his commander, but the juicy 6/6 from David feels better, despite being easily removed by Marath. David gets to his turn and plays a Plains. His new 7 gave him some ideas, and he casts Entomb, Counterbalance triggers and Baal reveals a Green Monolith. David protests. David resolves his Entomb, finding a Sire of Insanity, and the Animate Dead was indeed his plan, but it will have to wait another turn cycle. He attacks Leite with the Ascendant, and on his second main phase he casts Archon of Emeria, generating some complaints from the table as he passes. Leite gets his first slap from the Crypt. He plays a tapped Scrubland and casts Esper Sentinel before passing, slowly trying to recoup. Hélder plays a tapped Mana Confluence and exiles an Elvish Spirit Guide to cast his commander Marath. He passes, and on Baal's turn he jumps right into combat. After some discussion between him and David, he eventually attacks David, so Hélder doesn't feel forced to kill the illusion in the next turn cycle. He then plays a tapped Training Center and casts his Grim Monolith, triggering Esper Sentinel and not paying, as he needs the mana, and Leite could also try to find something to help versus David. Still in his end step, David fires a Path to Exile onto Drenith Magistrate, triggering the Sentinel and Counterbalance. Counterbalance reveals a land, Leite draws and Hélder finds a Plains from the path. It's David's turn and he plays a Gaia Reach Sanitarium, so no Thoracle shenanigans for now. He then casts an Animate Dead, targeting his Sire of Insanity. Esper Sentinel triggers and David doesn't pay for it. Still, Leite finds nothing and passes priority. Hélder passes as well, and Baal thinks for a second and also passes priority on it on the stack. However, when Animate Dead enters the battlefield, Baal tells David to hold his horses, and responds to the Animate's Dead ETB. You see, Animate Dead is an aura that reads Enchant Creature card in a graveyard, and only when it enters the battlefield does it fire a trigger that upon its resolution changes the enchantment text to become Enchant Creature put onto the battlefield with an Animate Dead. Return Enchanted Creature card to the battlefield under your control and attach Animate Dead to it. So Baal responds to this ETB trigger with a Trick Bind. Esper Sentinel triggers and he pays for it. This way, the trigger doesn't resolve and the enchantment stays on the field, enchanting the creature card that is still on David's graveyard. David quite upsetly turns his Serra Ascended sideways towards Leite and passes. Leite loses his crit roll and bringing Zur to get Necro seems less and less the ideal plan. He plays a tapped Watery Grave and casts a Talisman of Dominance before discarding to hand size and passing. Hélder starts his turn with a Nightshade Peddler, which he luckily found again. It resolves, so he soulbounds it with Marath, having it ready to snipe anything he needs. He plays a City of Brass and passes. Baal gets to his turn and goes to combat, sending the Serra Illusion at Leite this time around. He then plays a tapped Underground River and passes. David plays a Bloodstained Mire and also goes to combat. He sends the Ascendant at Leite and Archon at Hélder. This way, Hélder is also less compelled at killing the 6/6 just yet. David passes and Leite keeps on with the pain, taking another 3 from the crypt. He plays a tapped Verdant Catacombs and is forced to cast Zur as a possible blocker. Counterbalance triggers, but since Baal has no cards with mana value 4 in his deck, he decides not to reveal the top card so Hélder doesn't play around it in his next turn. Leite passes, and to be mana efficient, Hélder decides to fire his first shot, activating Marath and pinging Zur for 1 lethal Death Touch damage. Hélder gets to his turn and plays a tapped Prismatic Vista. These fetchlands are so painful in the presence of Archon of Emeria. Hélder then attacks Baal with his creatures and passes. On his end step, Baal untaps Grim Monolith, and then Leite casts an Opt, triggering Counterbalance, and in response, David cracks his Bloodstained Mire for his Swamp, to avoid any opposition agents. Baal then resolves the Counterbalance trigger and reveals a Tainted Pact. Leite scries to the top and draws it, and we're now on Baal's turn. This top deck opened a window for him, so he ponders for a bit and goes to combat, this time attacking Hélder. Hélder believes he might have something up his sleeve, so he takes it. In Baal's second main phase, he fires a Shatter Skull Smashing, X = 3, targeting the Archon and triggering the Esper Sentinel, but not paying. However, David responds to it with a Deflecting Swat, changing the target to Nightshade Peddler, forcing Hélder to fire his last 2 shots and removing his sniping potential. Counterbalance triggers and Baal reveals a mana drain. In response, Hélder activates Marath twice, one time to kill Serra Ascendant and the other to target Phantasmal Image, which triggers and is sacrificed. Hélder did forget to pay for the 2 activations, but this doesn't change the outcome of the game, as you will see, only 2 life points that we will adjust by then. After this, Baal plays a tapped Bloodstained Mire and is not capable of going ahead with his plan. You guessed it, the good old Thoracle. In his end step, David activates Gaia Reach Sanitarium, so everyone draws and discards 1, 2 lands, a Praetor's Grasp and notably a Felidar Guardian. David then gets to his turn, plays a Command Tower and casts a Wheel of Misfortune, hoping to find interaction for Baal's Thoracle plus a Tainted Pact combo. Sentinel and Counterbalance trigger, but Baal reveals a Gamble, and David does pay the 1. Still in response to the wheel, Hélder fires a Hushwing Grief, showing he was prepared all along. However, Baal responds with his mana drain, triggering the Esper Sentinel but not paying. Leite is the last person with a say in the matter and he lets the wheel resolve. Everyone casts their votes and we all laugh as the person casting the wheel is the most misfortunate one, as David voted too low, since he expected that at least Baal would vote 0. Everyone but David discard their hands and draws a new 7. Baal does discard Tainted Pact and Thoracle since he has a Gamble on top, that he can tutor for removal and/or breach and win after the Archon is removed. David then attacks Leite for 2 and we are on a coin flip away from saying goodbye to Leite. However, he does win it. He found a peer into the Abyss, but the Archon is preventing him from going further, so he goes for a Laboratory Maniac, triggering Counterbalance but revealing a land. Leite then plays a tapped Emergence Zone and passes, hoping to see the light of another day. Hélder gets to his turn and casts his Marath once again, Counterbalance triggers and Baal responds to it with a Vampiric Tutor. Esper Sentinel triggers and it doesn't pay for it. He finds to the top a Fire Covenant, that he reveals to the Counterbalance trigger, effectively countering Marath. Hélder then plays a tapped Bloodstained Mire and passes. Baal draws and gets 3 generic from his mana drain. He cracks his Bloodstained Mire for his Swamp. He plays a tapped Ancient Tomb and uses the mana drain's mana to help untap his Grim Monolith, but decides to pass, hoping that Leite dies to the crit roll and he has less interaction to fight for. In his end step, David activates Gaia Reach Sanitarium, once again digging for fuel, and everyone draws and discards 1. He then goes to his turn and jumps straight into combat, attacking Hélder, since Leite is hanging from a rope. He then casts his commander Alesha, triggering counterbalance and revealing an Isochron scepter, so Alesha resolves and he passes. Odds hurts and he wins it again. He simply casts Zur again and passes. In his end step, Hélder cracks his Prismatic Vista for a forest. He then goes to his turn, cracks his Bloodstained Mire hoping to find a basic mounted, but he has none, so he gets a tapped Sacred Foundry instead. He then exiles a Simian Spirit Guide for red and recasts his commander, tapping out, but actually holding on to some juicy free interaction. In his end step, Baal casts his Fire Covenant for a whopping 19 life, to clear the whole board, as per Sentinel triggers, and he does pay for it. Leite probes Baal's hand size but lets it resolve, successfully frightening Baal. David still activates Gaia Rich Sanitarium in his end step, so everyone draws and discards one. Still in this end step, Baal casts an Intuition. However, here is Leite's interaction at last, as he casts Force of Will, pitching a Snap. Counterbalance triggers, but the top card is not a foe, so Baal's plans go down the sink. He gets to his turn and fires a Gitaxian Probot Blade to see what he's fighting against. He sees quite a strong hand but lacking interaction, so he draws from the probe and decides to go for it again. This time with a risky gamble, as he can only discard 2 cards from the 5 in hand in order to win. He tutors for a Final Fortune and Leite rolls the die. Well, he nailed it. To the graveyard it goes. Baal then plays a Scalding Tarn and casts his commander, Obeka, Brewed Chronologist, before passing. David plays a Scalding Tarn and goes ahead and casts an Imperial Recruiter, triggering counterbalance but revealing a Cyclonic Rift, which actually intervenes with his plans of going for Kiki-Jiki lines, since he's lacking 2 mana to win now and another turn cycle means Baal would have their Cyclonic Rift at hand. After some pondering, he goes for a Karmic Guide. He then cracks his fetch for a Plateau and casts the Karmic Guide. It enters, triggering and targeting Felidar Guardian, in order to blink the Karmic Guide to get the Siren of Insanity to the battlefield. However, Hélder responds by evoking Endurance, exiling a Destiny Spinner. It enters and he targets David, to put his graveyard on the bottom of his library. David's plans of playing Hellbend once again fall short. Endurance dies and Animate Dead is then put into his graveyard, as it is no longer enchanting anything. We are on Leite's upkeep, and he rolls even, surviving yet once again. His lack of triple black prevents him from going for Pier, and as he cracks the fetch to get a swamp, it would mean Pier would now actually kill him, so he casts a Yawgmoth's Will. Baal probes Leite's graveyard and he would be capable of going for Labman plus Twister, which would shuffle up all his juicy graveyard, so he responds to it with a Fierce Guardianship. Leite sadly passes. Will he have another shot at it? Hélder now sees an opening and starts with a Chromox, entering and exiling a Force of Vigor, yet another response he had for Isochron or Breach. This Naya player is always ready to juggle up. He then casts a Mana Vault and follows it with a Timur Sabertooth. He has a Grand Abolisher as well, but the rift on top of Baal's library prevents him from casting it, so he goes for a Wheel of Fortune, hoping to find Dockside and Veil of Summer. Everyone discards and draws 7. Hélder does mention that he drew quite well, as he plays an untapped Stomping Ground, and casts Dockside Extortionist. Counterbalance triggers and Baal reveals a land. So now, with the haunting words from Hélder that he drew quite well, Baal probes the table as he has a single piece of interaction. He cracks the turn for a Steam Vents, taking 2, and then casts his Force of Will in response, pitching a Narset. Hélder did have a Deflecting Sword, but was 1 mana short from being able to cast it, so the fold resolves. Hélder then casts a Gamble, triggering the counterbalance and revealing a Force of Negation. He tutors for Ace of Vin's Reclamation to try to go for it next turn, and this time Leite didn't hit the target, making him discard a Windswept Heath. Hélder passes and Baal gets to his turn. He plays an Inventor's Fair and then casts his own Dockside Extortionist. It enters and he gets 6 treasures. He then cracks the Inventor's Fair for a Wishclaw Talisman, which he casts right away. He activates it to find Underworld Breach, and gives it to Leite. He proceeds to cast Underworld Breach and has exactly 4 mana to go for Thassa's Oracle plus Tainted Pact. But not only that means going off without protection, it also means plenty of YouTube comments on how it is a boring combo, so he goes for a safer and spicier route. He casts a Chromox, pitching his Cyclonic Rift. This way, with 5 mana, he can escape Final Fortune with his Force of Negation as backup. He then goes to his end step, and with Underworld Breach trigger on the stack, he activates Obeka to end his turn, exiling everything on the stack and going directly to cleanup, making it so that Underworld Breach survives to his next turn. He then untaps, draws a Snap that he casts on his Dockside Extortionist. He then casts Dockside again, this time gaining 7 treasures. He proceeds to escape Intuition, and finds a Narset's Reversal, Sundial of the Infinite and Rings of Rebuke. The table sees no great outs and gives him the artifact. Baal then escapes Final Fortune and holds priority by escaping Narset's Reversal on the Final Fortune. He can even escape Phantasmal Image copying Shimmer Zur and generate infinite mana, but infinite turns is what he's aiming for, as he escapes Iserkron Scepter and when it enters he imprints Final Fortune on it. He plays an untapped Blood Crypt and then casts Sundial of the Infinite, to easily demonstrate how he can kill everyone with Obeka, and bounce Karmic Guide and Shimmer Zur with Winds of Rebuke. Each time he gets to his end step and Underworld Breach and Final Fortune triggers are put on the stack, he responds to them with Sundial of the Infinite, ending the turn and exiling each object on the stack, therefore surviving turns enough to kill the table. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. Archon of Ymir and Counterbalance played a key role in this match, but eventually Grixis is still a great power due to sheer card quality as it came out on top with its interaction and tutor potential. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Aajimo, Uncrustable, Drunken Housecat, V, RJ, Heated Chill, Pina, and our two new stack breakers, Ricardo and Alex. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or by becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Join us again next week for a new set of Commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.